Assalamu alaikum, you're watching Views and News and I'm Faisal Rehman live from our Islamabad studios. Today we'll be talking about this very successful visit of the Prime Minister Imran Khan to China. He was invited there for the Winter Olympics and he held some very important meetings out there, which include the Premier of China as well as the President, Mr. Xi Jinping. And the second phase of CPEC was the priority in this particular visit, and perhaps a lot of issues have been sorted out, and now we'll be seeing that work will be done on a very fast track. Now, a lot of rumors were also there in the air that perhaps the work is very slow, or certain Chinese companies are now reluctant to, in fact, invest more or go along with the current project. But all these issues have been sorted out. Now, another very important and I would say significant area of discussion is about the long-term strategic partnership between these two countries. Definitely, how can we forget that now China is our strategic partner, and there is no doubt about it, whether we like it or we don't. Perhaps even the Prime Minister and his cabinet members have also said that on multiple occasions, that we don't want to be a part of any group, or rather we do not believe in the bloc politics, international affairs rather. But still, at the end of the day, when we see that the certain countries which were Pakistan's ally, and whether we talk about United States of America or other European countries, now things have changed. Over a period of time, what we have realized is that there is a Western bloc and there is an Eastern bloc. Pakistan is a member of SCO also. Now, interestingly, we have also learned that the Russian president, who was also present at the Olympics, in fact invited the Pakistani Prime Minister to visit Russia, and let's see when it is materialized. And I would also like to see our Prime Minister visiting Russia, anybody who will be there after 23 long years. So that is something very important. And prior to that, if you remember, the Russian Foreign Minister was also in Pakistan last year, and everybody appreciated that visit, and we also learned that things have really and significantly improved over a period of time. Now, before I say anything further, our production team has prepared a report. Let's watch that first, and after that I'm going to introduce you to our panelists and we'll talk about it.
Prime Minister Imran Khan's successful 4-day visit to China is an assertive expression of shifting Pakistan's foreign policy from geopolitics to geoeconomic. In this regard, Prime Minister's China's visit was loaded with wide-ranging meetings with Chinese top leadership and the business community, in which the bilateral, regional and global concerns were discussed, as well as he attended the opening ceremony of the Winter Olympics as a sign of solidarity with Beijing. Pakistan and China signed several memoranda of understanding during this visit of Prime Minister Imran Khan to China. According to the statements released by Prime Minister's office, Prime Minister Imran Khan met President Xi Jinping at the Great Hall of People in Beijing, in which two leaders reviewed the entire gamut of Pakistan-China bilateral cooperation and also exchanged views on regional and global issues of mutual interest. The statement added that Prime Minister briefed President Xi on people-centric geoeconomics vision and government's policies for Pakistan's sustained growth, industrial development, agricultural modernization and regional connectivity, as well as applauded the Chinese vision of Belt and Road Initiative. The Prime Minister Imran Khan highlighted that atrocities being perpetrated in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and the persecution of the minorities in India in the advancing Hindutva mindset of RSS BJP. Both leaders acknowledged that a peaceful and stable Afghanistan would promote economic development and connectivity in the region, and called on the international community to promptly assist the Afghan people in averting the humanitarian catastrophe. Prime Minister Imran Khan welcomed increased Chinese investments in CPEC's Phase 2, centered on industrialization and improving people's livelihoods. The two leaders in this meeting reaffirmed their resolve to building of Pakistan-China community for shared future and the new era.
Now, to talk about it, let me introduce you to our panelists. We have with us in our studio on my right is Dr. Adil Sultan. He is the Dean Strategic Studies at University of Islamabad. So, thank you very much for your time. And we'll also be talking to Lieutenant General retired Raza Muhammad Khan Saab, a former President, National Defence University and Senior Analyst. General Saab, pleasure to have you on the show, sir. Thank you so much for your time. And we'll also be talking to Anwar Iqbal Saab. He is based in the United States of America. He's a senior journalist and he'll be joining us around 8:30 p.m. Pakistani time. But let me start off from you, Dr. Adil Sultan Saab. Obviously, whenever any head of state from Pakistan visits China, whether it was President Asif Ali Zardari who visited around 8 times, or it was the former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif Saab during his 3 years, or rather 3 terms, he has visited China a lot of times. So the case is with General Musharraf when he was in power. And now Prime Minister Imran Khan Saab. So basically the alignment is the same, the concept is very clear, the strategic partnership seems to be getting stronger with each visit, I would say. No matter whoever is in power, our foreign policy towards China has remained the same. Now, sir, let's talk about this very, very important visit because of the timing, sir. Perhaps one issue is about the Afghan problem, and that issue was also discussed with the President of China. And whether you talk about the current situation that is developing around Pakistan or around CPEC, let me put it this way, that also came under discussion. Second phase was also discussed. Rapid work and its requirement also was a part of the discussion. Now, sir, a lot of people say that, since China has been helping Pakistan in improving the infrastructure or otherwise. Now, my question, sir, is that first of all, the importance of this visit, especially when Prime Minister visited and held some very important meetings, because there was this general perception that work on CPEC has slowed down. Let's talk from there, sir.
Yeah, absolutely right. I think this visit is significant in a way that there are clear signaling to the external actors also, and also to some of the domestic audience who are critical about the CPEC progress. If we see the joint statement, it's so comprehensive that it talks about everything between all kind of collaboration and cooperation between Pakistan and China. And you are absolutely right once you say that Pakistan and China cooperation or partnership is beyond the personalities. So whatever the government comes in Pakistan or in China also, this there is a convergence of interest between China and Pakistan. So this visit was important because there was lots of misperceptions being generated by the external actors that probably China is not happy with Pakistan, or Pakistan is going slow over CPEC. I think this...
Especially the Indian media was really doing a lot of propaganda on this.
Absolutely. I didn't want to name a country, but they also raised some questions about the protocol issues that were very petty. This doesn't happen, but there is those issues. And they did try to create some misperceptions that probably China-Pakistan relations are not so good. So outcome of this joint statement, I think that's a very forceful message for the external actors also, and some of the domestic critiques also, that this partnership is strong, it is here to stay, and rather it is being deepened with with the passage of time. So because if you see the joint statement, everything has been discussed during this visit, and it's quite likely the pace of CPEC and other collaborative projects, they are going to pick pace in the near future.
And the most important part is the follow-up visits, I would say. Foreign Minister has very categorically mentioned that he is going to go and visit China, say, in another month's time. Yeah. So that, all those, I would say, promises which were made during this particular visit should be materialized also. Because at the end of the day, sir, people want to see results. And that is something very important. And ever since there is a new wave of violence and terrorism in Balochistan, sir. Yesterday, 5 of our soldiers got martyred, and then prior to that, 7 of them. I saw the visuals, and honestly speaking, sir, it was a proper planned attack carried out by professionals, by snipers, with mute guns, because there was the silencer on them, and our soldiers had no clue where the fire was coming from. So what I'm saying, I think, sir, now since the enemies have also geared up to sabotage the CPEC in particular, sir, at the same time, I think we really need to beef up our own security also, which we have done. But I think a lot more needs to be done. And the real issue at the end of the day, sir, is the movement from geostrategic approach to geoeconomics. And perhaps that is something, if we are able to do that and do that within the given time frame, I think that is going to be a mega success for Pakistan. Let's also bring in General Saab now. General Saab, you heard what Dr. Adil Sultan Saab said about the visit. Now I want your particular opinion about this visit, sir, since we have done so many shows on this and you've been writing about it and I've been reading your articles also. Let's throw light and rather let's do the SWOT analysis, sir. Let's see the strengths and the weaknesses. General Saab.
Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. First of all, I'd like to refer to the basis of the Pak-China friendship and relationship. Besides China being a very close neighbor with extensive land borders with Pakistan and having common interests, it has taken decades of diplomacy to reach this level. If you recall, in the 1970 and 71, Pakistan was the one which assisted China and the US for their rapprochement, which actually became the basis of China becoming a permanent member of the UN Security Council in place of Taiwan. So I think that was a big sort of an achievement for both the countries. Then we all know, that Pakistan shares and supports China, on the issue of Hong Kong and Taiwan. And we resolved all our border issues initially in 1963, the ones which were there in Kashmir. We have common sort of perspectives and perceptions about Afghanistan, about Kashmir, and the rest of the world. And of course, CPEC itself, it is now accepted, appreciated by the people of Pakistan and across the political divide. And we know that CPEC is part of the BRI, which is the largest infrastructure and investment project in the history of the world, with probably now 68 to 69 countries, with 65% of the world population being part of it, and it comprises about 40% of the global GDP. And CPEC being, the kind of the flagship sort of a project. So it is important both to China, to Pakistan, and to both its people. And therefore, this is actually the big bond between the two countries. And I think after the visit of the Prime Minister, I think the emphasis, the momentum of CPEC Phase 2 is now going to be expedited. And I think it was only a few hours back that the Prime Minister's special advisor on CPEC made a mention that the Prime Minister had 20 back-to-back meetings with about 500 representative of Chinese companies. And there were declarations made about steel and metal recycling plants in Gwadar worth $4.5 billion. And this is not out of the $53 billion which have already been committed to CPEC. This is an additional, and which alone is going to provide about 40,000 jobs to Pakistanis. And then, very focused discussions and decisions were made on helping Pakistan not only in the industrial sector, but in the agriculture and in the LNG storage at Karachi and at a number of places. Of course, you made a mention of the security situations related to the CPEC and in Balochistan. I think this is not the first time that the combined enemies of China and Pakistan, they are making all-out efforts to hurt the CPEC. But the government of Pakistan and China are very well aware of the designs of these enemies. And I think together they have beaten them in the past and they will beat them in the present now and in the future also. But we need to know, that they are now being ousted from Afghanistan, and they're finding it very difficult to cross over because of the fencing. But unfortunately,
but Jalsa, the question is that obviously law and order
is
is the first and foremost important factor, sir. For example, if even you allow any individual or any corporation to come and invest in Pakistan, sir, no matter what sort of rate of return you offer, but at the end of the day, the real issue is about the law and order situation, sir. Over here, sir, it seems that there is a proper mechanism which is being followed by the enemy, and since it is being followed, so the results are pretty encouraging for the foes. And the interesting part is that when you see that our troops are being targeted and killed, whether you talk about an intelligence-based operation in which we lost 9 precious lives, including an officer, in a couple of areas in Balochistan. And you know, it's not only in one particular part, sir. You talk about the areas, I mean, one would be touching the borders of Afghanistan, the other would be all along the coastal line of Gwadar and perhaps other districts close to that. What I'm saying is, sir, that there is a proper comprehensive planning and strategy in order to again make sure that Balochistan bleeds, because when Balochistan bleeds, Pakistan bleeds too, sir. Don't you think, sir, that is another very important factor which should not be neglected at any cost, sir? No matter what is happening, but at the end of the day, this is where the problem seems to be.
Yeah, this question is again to me, isn't it?
Yes, sir, it is for you.
All right. Yes, absolutely. I agree with you. I think greater emphasis needs to be paid to this aspect. We know, that the National Action Plan has been revised, and according to the 18th Amendment, law and order in particular is now the responsibility of the provinces. In this case, the province of Balochistan, whose counter-terrorism efforts and capacity needs to be enhanced. So that is, I think, very important. Of course, the Federation is helping them in every way possible, and I've always been saying that I think both Pakistan and China should combine their resources in terms of intelligence in particular to trace out all these culprits and to punish them. Let me also add to this that, these attacks are on the far-flung posts, and some people have called it frontier corps, but they're actually mainly on the frontier constabulary, which is a kind of a police, so therefore, these attacks are not on those kinds of established law enforcement agencies. And you heard the DGISPR in the last few days saying that all these attacks have been defeated. There has been some cost, but they have been defeated, and I think many of these terrorists have been punished, and the remaining people who may have now, come over from Afghanistan through the Pak-Iran border, which has not been totally fenced. I can assure you, that they will be caught. Not only them, but also, their sympathizers, their supporters, and their financiers, and they all will be punished and they will be eliminated, as were the terrorists, in the erstwhile FATA and other areas of Pakistan, inshallah. Very soon, you'll see that.
All right, so let's hope and let's pray, and we are looking forward to that. Now, Dr. Adil Sultan, a couple of important areas. Obviously, when a certain statement is issued that from this strategic point of view, rather, that we are moving in a certain direction, and that direction is called the geoeconomics. Unfortunately, sir, Pakistan has been, and rather I would say even now, Pakistan has been a security state, sir. Until recently, we realized that it is not the external threat which matters, or the internal threat, perhaps. It is about your food security, it is about your water security, it is about the global climate change, sir, and Pakistan is one of those countries which will get affected the most. And last but not the least is about your economic stability, sir. I think that holds the key at the end of the day, sir. Countries like Singapore, even countries like Israel for that matter, smaller than Karachi perhaps, but look at where they are. The interesting aspect seems to be that we really need to make sure that our economy stabilizes first and then we capitalize on that, sir. But unfortunately, that particular area is being targeted, sir. Initially, it was Karachi, which came under fire because that is your economic hub, generates a lot of money, a lot of taxes, a lot of jobs. Then Balochistan, being a neglected province, let me put it this way, sir, again became a target. No matter how much money the government is going to spend through those politicians otherwise, sir, it is not going to be effective because the trickle-down effect doesn't exist. Army is doing whatever they can, but there is a limited capacity and they have a different job. They have a different assignment to look after. Now, sir, that is something which is, I think, the primary concern, because I remember when Chinese engineers were killed in the northern area, sir, that was around Eid time, little before the Eid, and their bodies were in CMH. I still remember because my sister passed away during those days, and I went there and I was surprised to see that they haven't been buried yet or whatever they do, because the Chinese had shown a lot of concern that what exactly is going on, because obviously why would you let your people get killed in any country for that matter, no matter what sort of a project you are into. That concern needs to be addressed, sir. Let's start off from there.
There are 2 points. I fully agree about once we talk about economics, unless you have economic sovereignty, you are able to make your own decisions, bring stability to your own at the domestic level. The move to geoeconomics is not going to be successful. And the second point that you are talking about, this, I think there is a misconception also, because so much hype on geoeconomics. Geoeconomics and geopolitics, you cannot dissociate these two things. Because as
is it an extension of the previous one, right? Isn't it?
It is both related. One affects the others, and you cannot divorce these two things. Like you said, what happened in Balochistan?
But that is the area of your expertise, actually. That's why I'd put this question.
Yeah, we continue to explore this, do some research also, and I have been a little skeptical about this overhype on the shift to geoeconomics. Geoeconomics is vital.
Is it time bound, sir?
No, it is not time bound. Geoeconomics cannot be time bound, because as you grow, your interest grows, your economics grows, everything is related. But like you said, there has nothing changed on the external borders. Your domestic situation has not changed much. So you cannot totally neglect geopolitics also. So what happened in Balochistan, it's all geopolitics, because there are certain external actors which do not want Pakistan to be stable for their own political reasons. So that is geopolitics. So you have to deal with these two issues together, and you cannot create that perception that we have to focus on geoeconomics and leave geopolitics. This is not going to happen. And externally also, there's many international scholars, they say the neoliberal order is heading towards its demise, the liberal order which was introduced after the end of the Cold War. And look what United States and other countries are doing, what is happening in Ukraine. This is all geopolitics.
Correct.
The world is heading back towards another Cold War between Russia, China and United States. So geoeconomics is important, because unless you have the resources, you cannot deal with the outside world with strength. So this hype which has been created, I think this has been there has been misdirected debate on this, as if we are going to do some wonders in the economic field and everything will be fair and fine. Your neighbors are not going to change. Afghanistan is not going to be stable in the next couple of days. It will take time. India is like it is. You have to deal with India, and rest of the world also. Your relations with the global powers also. How you are dealing with those powers. You were very close to United States, but no more. You have shifted. Now we are moving towards Russia and China. So this bloc politics is also emerging, whether it will materialize in the end or not. There are so many variables that we cannot conclusively say what happens in.
So we don't want to be a part of the bloc politics, but whether we like it or we don't, eventually this is what is going to happen, correct?
Absolutely. A country like Pakistan, with limited national power, you have to adjust your power potential and you have to deal with the outside world accordingly. So you cannot completely neglect what happens in rest of the world on your borders, and also domestically also.
All right. So we've been joined in by Mr. Anwar Iqbal from Washington. Assalamu alaikum, Anwar Saab.
Wa alaikum assalam.
So good to have you in the show, sir. It's been quite a long time since we heard from you. But anyway, once again, thank you very much for your time. Now, Anwar Iqbal Saab, since you're based in the United States of America, and a lot of criticism, because whenever I switch on CNN or any other Western channel, I mean, they're after the Russians and the Chinese. This is what we end up seeing. I mean, that is the narrative they have set. That's the agenda, perhaps. But now, sir, when you talk about this very important visit of the Russian president to China and the Pakistani premier there as well, and along with obviously 20 other heads of states and kings and the leaders. But let's talk about these two, Russian and the Pakistani. Pakistani because of the current happenings that which rather are being witnessed on almost daily basis, law and order, about CPEC and so much more. But the Russian premier's visit again is, I think, of a lot of significance, especially if you look at what is happening in Ukraine and the kind of statements that are being issued by the Western countries and the European countries in particular. Let's throw light on that aspect, sir.
Well, as far as our Prime Minister's visit is concerned, I did not see much in the U.S. media. They obviously focused on the Russian president's visit, on the Winter Olympics and China's policies. But let's see, recently I did notice sort of a positive change. I should say it's still sort of very little, not very obvious, but it is there. You might have seen stories in the Pakistani media where at a State Department briefing, the spokesperson once again described Pakistan as a strategic partner, saying that Pakistan was and remains a strategic partner, and we do want to continue this relationship. And this sort of a statement has come after many years. I mean, the last time the United States called Pakistan a strategic partner was, I don't know, even before Trump, not even in the last days of Obama. So it was many, many years ago when Pakistan was called a strategic partner. And also I have seen stories in the U.S. media suggesting that pushing Pakistan too hard could actually push it deeper into Russia's corner, and we do not want to do that. We should sort of be careful in how to deal with Pakistan. So I think this is the result of realizations on two fronts. Number one, they do not want to Pakistan too hard, as these media have been suggesting, and that they do want Pakistan to maintain some sort of relationship with Pakistan. Number one. Number two, there is also a realization that yes, India is important. India contains China policy, but India is not Pakistan. India is a larger country. India has its own interests, and it moves at its own pace. And there were two very recent reminders on the issue of Ukraine. The Americans expected India to vote in their favor against Russia, but they don't. The Indians abstained also on S-400, on the missiles where the Indians
But the Indians were not
Russia.
present in that voting, sir. If I'm not wrong, please correct me. Because what I learned that there were 50 members of the Security Council, and Indians were not present there. And they have shown their support towards
that was,
the Russians.
they announced that they abstained. That was intentional. They didn't want to actually support America and didn't want to be seen going against it. So they decided not to vote. That was very significant. It was noted here. It was pointed out in the media also. And so there was a realization that they cannot really, it is good to have close relations with India, but Pakistan is also a useful country. So I think these two things have gone in favor of Pakistan.
All right. Now, Anwar Sahab, another important factor, and that is again, related to the same issue, because when you talk about the American media in particular, sir, the way they are maligning the Russians and the way they are, in fact, showing Vladimir Putin as a very hostile character, or perhaps somebody whom you cannot trust, or who has got war on his mind. But the point is, at the end of the day, they are putting their foot on their tail. So at the end of the day, sir, it's not the Russians which are being provoked. Perhaps it's the Western world, it's NATO, it's the Americans in general who are trying to still, put pressure on the Russians. But perhaps they were not expecting that kind of resistance from the Russians. And this man means business, and I guess he always has meant it as well. So taking Vladimir Putin that lightly, I don't think is the right approach. But do you think that the division within the ranks of the Western world is pretty obvious now, looking at what Germany is up to? They're very reluctant to even support in any tangible form. They were talking about those 5,000 helmets rather that they've given to the Ukrainian forces, but nothing other than that. Their foreign minister, or rather the chancellor most likely, is going to visit America. So the case is with so many Latvian countries like Latvia or Lithuania and so on and so forth. My point now, sir, is that a very clear-cut division now. Two countries have become the target of the Americans. One is Russia, one is China. One is being tackled through NATO, the other one through AUKUS or Quad for that matter, or certain other countries. And interestingly, sir, these are the times when Pakistan is getting really close to Russia also. Pakistan had always been very close to China. But where do we stand as a country, as a nation, as an ally of the Americans? Because when I hear our foreign minister saying that we are having a historical relationship with the Americans, I fail to understand what exactly he means by that. Would you like to explain that to me, sir?
Well, if you want to understand, you can easily understand these things. Obviously, the problem with us, journalists, is that we think in terms of headlines. We want everything to happen now, and so that we could have a nice headline in tomorrow's newspapers. So if you look at, say, the U.S.-Russia or the West-Russia relationship, it has a long, long history. If you've read Kipling, you might have noticed that he makes fun of Russians, saying that the Russians are good as long as they don't claim to be Europeans. They are not Europeans, okay? And Afghanistan, on our border, was created as a buffer zone between British India and Imperial Russia. And that animosity between the West and Russia was inherited by America, and the Americans have continued it since then. China is a new arrival on the horizon. China, the enmity with China, I'm declaring it enemy number one, and all those things. That's a new thing, because before that, China was not considered that strong, that important, that the West should see it as an enemy or a threat. Now they do. But Russia was always seen as a threat, even before the Russian Revolution. So, there was a time when people in Washington and in London felt that after the fall of the Berlin Wall and the collapse of the Soviet Union, Russia has weakened, it's no more a threat to us. But that didn't last long. Russia is still the largest country in the world. Russia still has a lot of resources. Yes, it has many problems too. But now people in Washington feel that Russia is also a force to deal with, and they do not want to ignore it. So this Russia-US or China-US rivalries will continue. For us, when our foreign minister says that we have a long traditional relationship with India, he's right. Yes, with America, he's right. Yes, he's right. We do. America is still our biggest business partner. The largest number of Fulbright scholarships to America come from Pakistan. We are an English-speaking country. We are a country that has traditionally dependent on American technology, not just in defense, but in other fields too. So we do want to, have to continue this relationship. Pakistan is not a large enough or strong enough a country to actually take sides like this. We have to maintain our relationship with all major world powers in a very delicate way, in a very careful way. We do not want to annoy anyone. And then while doing so, we also need to decide which country is closer to us, which is not. What is good for us, what is not. Right now, what we face is a very belligerent BJP-dominated India, and to deal with India, the most useful and the most important country for us is China, and therefore, obviously, we have a very close relationship with China, which we should continue. But while doing so, we should not also end up annoying America. That would be a mistake too. So we have to maintain this balance. We cannot take sides.
All right, so thank you very much. And you, in fact, mentioned something very important. Jalsa, we cannot afford to annoy the Americans because our dependency, whether we talk about the weapons for the military or technology in general, sir, a lot of dependence on the Americans. Whenever a student even thinks of going abroad for the studies, America is the first country that pops up in your mind. You talk about technology, you talk about education, you talk about medical, anything. America is the benchmark. Now, interestingly, sir, what Anwar Iqbal was saying that Pakistan has to very carefully, look into its foreign policy where we can balance or rather create an equilibrium. But sir, trying to create an equilibrium between the Chinese and the Americans or the Russians and the Americans in particular, I think the Indians have done a brilliant job, sir. The way they have supported Russia on Ukraine issue, yet they were able to get S-400 missile system from the Russians. No statement was issued because the Americans perhaps wanted them to. Initially there was a statement, but nothing happened regarding that, and the Indians are pretty happy because I think the way they capitalize on all these fronts, or rather the way they they milk the Russians or the Americans or the Europeans, that's brilliant, isn't it, sir? What do we have to learn from them?
Well, I think we don't have to learn anything from the Indians. They were supposed to be, a non-aligned country, and that was part of, their thinking. I think for many decades they have thrown that to the dustbin. Now they have very clearly they are, a strategic partner, first of the United States and thereafter of anyone else. And I think I will go back to the question that you asked earlier from the other panelist. I think it was 3 days back that when the Indian defense budget was being discussed in the Indian Parliament, then it was Mr. Rahul Gandhi who accused the Indian Foreign Ministry of being responsible for bringing Pakistan and China together, although this had been their strategic goal to keep them separated. To that, I would add that the United States itself has actually compelled both China as well as Russia to become each other's strategic partner. If you recall, in the 70s, one of the reasons why Nixon paid a visit to China was to create differences between the Russians and the Chinese. So right now, they are pushing them together, close to each other. So I don't see, the foreign policies either of the United States or of India something that we can emulate. What we need to do is, and I think our government is pretty clear, that we have a set of our national interest and national security interest. We will continue to keep them paramount. And in accordance with that, we will balance and manage our foreign policy, I think, which we are doing. Very quickly, you made a mention of Pakistan being a security state. I think I'd like to inform you that did Pakistan have any other options with our, defense budget being close to about $8 billion and that of India being $75 billion, and the issue of Kashmir, and look at what was happening in Afghanistan for the last 4 decades, with the Americans, having more than 150,000 troops at one time and 37 countries staying there and the war going on and they spending $3 trillion. And Pakistan was able to defend itself, I think, quite effectively with whatever defense budget we got. Right now, I think it is India which has become a national security state. It is the United States which is the national security state, Israel and many others. Pakistan, I think, has been doing well within its means. It has never, been part of an arms race with India or with anyone else. And I think on that account, our national security and defense policy is again very balanced, and it needs to continue to do that. A very quick word, on geopolitics and geoeconomics. I think they are not mutually exclusive. Geopolitics can assist and should assist geoeconomics and vice versa. And I think that is how it needs to be considered. Semantics aside on what is prominent and what is not. I would repeat that it is a combination of the two, which can help and assist, in progressing, in protecting, and promoting your national interest, and they should not be taken exclusively from one another.
All right, Jalal Saab, thank you so much, sir, for your comments. It was pleasure to have you, Anwar Saab, and thank you very much, sir, for your presence as well. And that's all we have for this hour. I'll see you inshallah tomorrow at 8:05. Till then, you take good care. Khuda Hafiz.